one of the big events in your career was the Zodiac, making the arrest of the Zodiac Killer. And one of the things we don't want to confuse with, New York had its own sort of copycat Zodiac, right? It has nothing to do with the California Zodiac Killer. But
the only thing that it had to do with it is that he was inspired by him.
Okay.
And it was a copycat,
Because some people thought that, because recently something came up about the California Zodiac Killer. And
it looks like they might have broke the code.
Yes.
After like 50 years. I looked into it earlier this week. It's interesting.
But you're still working the case, just you're not getting paid.
I'm still working the case. I'm not getting paid.
You're still on the case.
Yeah. So what was going on with the New York copycat case? It started in 1990, and he was shooting people in the 7-5 precinct and the adjacent 102 and the adjacent 104 precinct. But in those days, those precincts, they were very, very busy. And nobody would have put those unsolved shootings together if he didn't start communicating with the press. He started writing letters to the New York Post, 60 Minutes, and he's taking credit for shootings.
Right.
And sure enough, they put the cases together that he's taking credit for in his writings, and they are in fact similar, because the bullets, he would brag in the letters, there's no lands and no grooves in the bullets. So when they started looking at the evidence of the shooting victims that he took credit for, they realized there were no lands and no grooves in those bullets.
Let's just stop for a second, tell our audience what lands and grooves are, because I don't think they all know that.
So when a bullet is fired through the barrel of a gun, when they design these guns and the barrels, I don't know what they process it. I don't know what
it's a machine processing that explained to me. It puts a spin on the bullet, much like when you throw a football, you put a spin on the football, right?
Right. And each gun has the unique markings.
Right.
So when the bullet travels through the barrel, it leaves those unique markings, and they can be compared to other bullets from that same gun and matched, as opposed to being compared to bullets from a different gun, and they're not going to match.
Right.
It's like a fingerprint. So he was bragging in his letters that there was no lands and no grooves. He thought that we couldn't match it. But when you speak to these ballistics experts, the lands and grooves helps matching it, and they can be matched. But there's other nicks and markings inside the barrels that when a bullet goes through the barrel, even though it's not spinning properly, it's going to leave a nick or another bullet. So he thought we couldn't match it. When we subsequently did solve it, we were able to match the guns that we recovered from his apartment to the crime scenes.
Chief, there's a weird profession, a ballistics expert. Those guys truly, truly love guns in an unhealthy way.
Yeah, but I mean, I used to go up to the ballistics lab to watch them compare.
Yeah,
I mean, they're dedicated souls.
Oh no, they're good. I'm just saying they love.
Yeah, no, I know.
Guns. I meant that to be semi-humorous.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. But they live guns, and they can tell you the technology is unbelievable. They can tell you from looking at the bullet and putting it under the microscope. Yeah, that's a Smith & Wesson, Model 2 or whatever it is. They know it's not a Colt. They know it's not a H&M or Richardson. They can narrow it down to the make and model. Sometimes it's very important.
And to our listeners, also, there's a few other ways. If a gun is a semi-automatic, it spits out the shell, and the markings on the side of the casing are also unique to that firearm, as is the
primer hit
firing pin, which leaves a unique mark also on the casing. And so those are two other ways that the casing, and then there's a database called Brass Catcher, right?
Yep.
That compares the brass all over the city, different shootings, and they find out, voila, the same gun is being used in a bunch of shootings.
Exactly. And I experienced that. I had a couple of shootings in the 7.5 that were matched to bullets in the 7.3, the 4.2, all over the city. And now, so let's say it's an unsolved case that you have. Now you take a look at the cases that the other precincts have on it, and they might have a nickname, they might have a description, they might have something more that you have.
Right.
So you put it all together, you know, and you help further the cause. You know.
Yeah, and
So,
I think like in the past, there was none of those like sort of comparisons because, as you say, people weren't talking to each other. I don't know what year Brass Catcher came out. I don't think it was. It's a relatively new technology.
yeah, I think it would be the later '90s or the early 2000s.
Right. So back in before all of these.
Probably later '90s. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and then, another technological advance, and we won't get deeply into it as far as investigations, is the DD5 system, which allows you to search complaint follow-ups or detectives' investigations citywide, right? So if
Yes.
you have the name, well, Pito, how many Pitos have you known in your career? Millions of them, right?
Millions.
But if that name comes up in the 7.5 and then it comes up in the 105, it comes up in the 2.8, comes up in the 3.2, hey, we may have the same perp doing this crime, right?
Exactly. That searchable database now is invaluable. There's so many things, like even a complaint report. And now they expanded to like a booklet. But when I was young, I remember they started adding tattoos, phone numbers that the individual called, beeper numbers that they would call back then, beepers.
Chief, when I was a young cop, I never understood like, oh, why do they want all these they got to make 3 phone calls. First of all, they're kicking your ass out of the station house in 2 hours.
Yeah,
I don't got the time to let this guy make 3 phone calls, right? But then, well, you become an investigator, you go, oh shit, that's why. Because, these are the calls, this is where he's laying his head,
If he's a drug dealer, he's going to call his partner, number 1.
Right.
Then his mother, number 2, and maybe his girlfriend, number 3. But, he's going to call, somebody's got to let him know, I got arrested. They seized the guns. They seized the drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
All the other databases, the DJS report, when they go down, when they get arrested, and then a civilian interviews them and say, "Oh, we know you gave this address to the police, but what's your real?"
Yeah.
They give their real shit to that, or a patient in a hospital. They're going to give their real information because they want to know what's
right. That's funny. Yeah.
Right, but those databases are invaluable. We didn't always have access to that stuff.
I remember one time there was a guy. He was involved in a homicide, and he had a nameplate, and his nickname was Homicide. I guess he did a prior homicide. So he was working in a shoe store, and he's selling shoes, and he's got his homicide plate number. So one of my partners says, "Oh, can you imagine? Trying on your kids' sneakers, those sneakers. Oh, Homicide. Do you have them in size 3? Yeah, I'm saying yeah, that's the way it is.
You can't make that shit up.
Yeah.
So you got the Zodiac guy. How many shootings or murders did he do?
He shot 9, and he killed 3. And like I said, he connected those shootings to him by the letters. And for 6 years, we hunted him and searched him, and finally, lucky break, he gets involved in a domestic incident with his sister, who was in the back bedroom of the apartment. They lived on Pickens Avenue with her boyfriend, and he didn't approve of the boyfriend. Boyfriend was a drug dealer. He didn't like drug dealers. So he ends up shooting his sister in the rear end in a dispute, and barricading the boyfriend barricades himself in the back bedroom. So the sister is out in the hallway bleeding from the rear end. Neighbors call the police. Police respond, and next thing you know, they're being fired upon from every window in the apartment. The front of the house, the back of the house, because those cops are responding. They're surrounding the place. And this guy's got 7, they didn't know what it was. They thought it was 7 guns or something like that lined up at each window. And he would, run from window to window, firing shots at the cops. So I was a hostage negotiator at the time. And I had just become a negotiator. And I responded to the scene as a negotiator because he had the boyfriend hostage. And it was a 100-degree day. It was hot as unbelievable. They set me up with the ceramic vest, the helmet, the hostage negotiation windbreaker. I must have lost 20 pounds that day, sweating. But initially they set up a barrier in front of the building, and I'm got the loudspeaker, and I'm trying to engage him in conversation, and he's not really responding. He'd come to the window, point where I thought was a rifle at me for a couple times, but he didn't shoot, and he didn't really communicate. So then we were able to work our ways into the apartment building, and we go up to outside his door. And after about 3 hours of me trying to, I think the ESU guys wanted to collar me more than they wanted to collar the shooter, because I was saying the same things. I was just trying to get the guy to talk.
Yeah.
Enough blood has been shed. We want him. So finally, he started talking to me through the door, and he says, "Okay, I'll surrender." So I'm taking directions from the emergency service guys, and they had people on the roof.
Yeah.
And they said, "Listen, we're going to lower a bucket down to the window of the apartment. Tell him to put all the guns that he has and all the ammunition that he has in the bucket." So they do that. They lower the bucket down about 3 times.
Yeah.
They're bringing up pipes and wood and bullets. And so now he comes to the door and he says, "Okay, I got rid of all my guns and my shells and everything." I said, "Okay." So he says, "But what should I do with my bombs?"
Oh, shit.
So I said, "What do you have bombs in there?" He says, "Yeah, I have some bombs in here too." So now I look at the emergency service guys and I say, "What should I tell them to do?" They said, "Okay." They discuss it with their boss and they said, "All right, tell him to leave the bombs unattended, come to the door, surrender, and then once we clear him out of the apartment and the boyfriend out of the apartment, the sister's boyfriend out of the apartment, we will send the bomb squad in to see what they have." So that's what we did, and we take him down. We escort him to the 7-5 precinct. I was able to establish a good rapport with him. He wanted me to go to the 7-5 with him, and I accompany him in, and I hand him over to Detective Dan Powers and Detective Tom Marr, who are now investigating the shooting of the sister as a crime, because we didn't know he was a Zodiac Killer.
Right.
So he writes out a confession to Danny Powers and Tommy Marr for shooting his sister. And at the bottom of the page, he does a strange symbol, like a cross. So they both knew I was very familiar with the Zodiac case, and they brought the confession back out to me at the scene, because I went back out to, number one, get my private car again. And
you didn't want to leave that to sell hanging out there.
Yeah, it was stolen to sell.
Like it's stolen.
Yeah. And then I wanted to see how they made out with the bombs, So they bring out the confession to me, and they show it to me. And as soon as I read the confession, I recognized the handwriting from the letters that I've been studying for the last 4 years. And I said to them, "So as I'm standing here, this is the Zodiac shooter." And then it all starts making sense. The guns that he had were all zip guns. They were homemade devices.
Wow.
So he would go to the local plumbing store, buy pipe, and then fabricate a gun. That's why he knew there was no lands and grooves. It wasn't processed to be drilled that way.
Right.
So we get back to the station house, and although I knew we had him because of the handwriting, it was just the beginning of a lot of work because I had to corroborate it. So one of the crime scenes, he had left a note, and they recovered one thumbprint from the crime scene in Central Park. And I said, "Tommy Marr," "Tommy, take his fingerprints, run it down to Ronnie Alonges." He was the most dedicated forensic detective, worked with it steadily. Give him to Ronnie and see what Ronnie says. So Tommy Marr does that. Then we also ship the ballistics, all the guns, gun parts, ammo, and everything down to the ballistics unit.
Did he actually have bombs in there too?
Yeah, he had two explosive devices, pipe bombs, and one smoke bomb. He was going to graduate from being a serial killer to being a serial bomber.
Wow.
He had actually planned on blowing up a movie station, a movie house in New York City. Wow. So we prevented a lot more bloodshed that day. So I got a phone call from Tommy down at 1PP, and Ronnie Long just matched the fingerprint to the Central Park letter. So now we really know we had him.
You got him.
And then the subsequent ballistics reports, they were able to, ballistic examination, they were able to identify the zip guns as being the guns that shot the Zodiac victims. And then even though DNA this was 1996, And even though DNA was still relatively new, he had licked one of the envelopes that he mailed to 60 Minutes, and we were able to match eventually the DNA from the letter. And then he, after about an 8-hour interrogation, he did give up the crimes. You know, he started. He was very religious. He had a St. James Bible. All he wanted to talk about was religion. Until finally, you know, we were able to get him start talking about the shootings.
What rank were you at this point?
Sergeant.
You were sergeant. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And where were you assigned?
I was just recently assigned to the Brooklyn North Homicide Squad.
Oh, okay.
And luckily for me, he was living in a 7-5, and I was very familiar with all the detectives and the location, and it all worked out well. So
well, you know, it's something that obviously the detectives liked you too, because with a big case like that, they would probably be like, "Oh, don't get him involved," you know. But they liked you, and they brought.
oh
you,
no, they did.
you know.
I had such a rapport with them. You know, I mean, you know, I can say it now because I'm retired. I was more a detective than a chief or a boss. You know what I'm saying? I was.
Yeah, you
I
were.
was into
You
it.
were a cop that made boss.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a detective,
So,
anti-crime cop. You know, then a
yeah,
detective.
crime cop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like as people don't totally understand. Usually, the higher you go up in rank in the police department, the more administrative your job becomes. Right? It just becomes.
It's true, but I was. There's another edge to that sword, and I tell this to young guys. I say, you know, becoming a boss now gives you the opportunity as the boss to make decisions and to involve yourself in what you want to involve yourself in.
Right.
You know, if you're a detective and the boss tells you go canvass this building or go work on this case, and it's not the case you want to work on, you know, the high priority case. Now you're the boss. You determine where you're going to be and what you're going to do.
Right.
So I took advantage of that, you know, and then I made lieutenant in the 7-5 squad.
You were the commanding officer of the 7-5 squad?
Yeah, for a while, for about 4 or 5 years, and then I
That
went
was at one point the #1 homicide precinct in the city, right?
in 1993. The first year I was assigned there. I was assigned there January 3rd, 1993. 129 homicides in 5 square miles.
Wow.
On top of that, we had 400 to 500 non-fatal shootings. It was crime scene to crime scene to crime scene. That's what it was, you know.
Like a bloodbath, that place, right?
It was unbelievable, yeah.
I
And now
heard something. I read something once in the newspapers. It said on the wall of the interrogation room in the 7-5, it said, "If you know someone who killed someone, let us know so you can go." I thought that was great.
yeah, and then we also had a dogicide shot. You know, all these commands had homicide shots.
Yeah.
To keep the number. We had dogicides. There was so many dogs getting shot. You know, because
God.
of the drug dealers and you know. It was fascinating times, but then 9/11 happened, and I was assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force as a lieutenant, and that was a fascinating transition.
Tell us about that a little bit. I don't think most people know much.
I can't talk too much about it because of the classification issues, but you know, in general, we're thrown into this nightmare, you know, this tragedy that happened on 9/11, and you know, we all knew people that were killed. We all knew people that were, you know, affected by it terribly, and a lot of emotion going on. But I get assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Now I'm learning, you know, basically new laws, terrorism laws that Congress has given the FBI, new techniques, and I went from 5 square miles in New York City to the whole planet, the whole world of being my jurisdiction, and you have to learn what's motivating these guys. Why did they do this? You know, and then you start learning about the religions. And I mean, I know more about Islam at the time than I probably did about my own religion, and geography learning and language. I wish I learned more, but history. It was an unbelievable experience, and you know, it's still active today. You know, it's still going on today.
Right.
I follow it closely in the media. You know, right now Africa's getting hit hard, and it's still the Middle East is getting hit hard. We have to be vigilant that we don't get hit again here. You know.
Well, I think isn't there a big hotbed of terrorist activity, Somalia? Isn't?
Yes.
Yeah.
Al-Shabaab.
Right.
They're based. It's an offshoot of Al Qaeda, and they're very violent. But it's really expanding into ISIS has been moved out of like Syria and parts of the Middle East, and they're expanding greatly in Africa, and it's going towards Western Africa. There was a couple incidents this week in Niger and Nigeria, where uh, hundreds of people are kidnapped and dozens are killed, and it's unbelievable. But
How would you say New York City detectives are at investigating terrorism?
it's funny. It's funny you ask that. It's a really good question. So New York detectives are New York detectives. Highly experienced and trained and dedicated. Uh, FBI agents, they tend to be a little bit more educated than the regular NYPD detective. Although a lot of detectives have college degrees and so forth, but a lot of the agents have advanced degrees and so forth. It's a tremendous compliment. We complement each other very well, and the FBI guys in the JTTF love the NYPD guys, and the NYPD guys learn so much because we rely on the FBI guys, for their knowledge, number one, their experience, which is different than ours, number two, and plus the processes and the systems and all that, and they really went out of their way to help us, learn all that. So it was a really good marriage, and it still is a good marriage. I know I keep in touch with both FBI people and JTF people now.
But
Uh,
the feds also have all the best toys too, right?
yeah, the Congress really gives them, tremendous amounts of money
Right.
and tremendous authorities, legal authorities, and yeah, they are incredibly well advanced. All the modern technology they're up on. Um, like the first time I ever heard of Twitter, it was during the Mumbai case, what was going on in India,
Right.
and one of the victims was an American citizen, and he was holed up in his hotel room trying to stay alive, and he was communicating through Twitter. Now I never heard of Twitter before, but the FBI, they're computer people. They were all on top of it, and
Right.
so they have people that are cyber people that are really advanced in cyber technologies. It's
That
very.
that Mumbai incident is a terrifying incident because I think it was about 7 or 8 guys that were heavily armed, right? They went to an area that was really crowded and just started shooting people, just executing people. And
Yep.
the India police were not equipped at all to challenge these guys. They didn't have an emergency service like we do. They basically
I
got
think it was 6 hours away. I think the only emergency service people they had was 6 hours away.
yeah, and they basically the police there got slaughtered with the civilians.
Yes, and these guys went right to a train station, a major train hub, shot that up. Then they went to a Chabad house, which is a Jewish synagogue type of location. They destroyed that place and killed everybody they could there. And then they went to the hotel, and
Right.
they knew they were dying that day. Those terrorists. They were brainwashed by people in Pakistan. And it was unbelievable the recordings and the video footage that were able to be recovered from all that. Yeah, it's and you know what, something like that could happen.
That was my next point was that, I think it was always feared that that could come to Times Square
Yeah,
or
yeah,
an attack like that could come to Times Square. And even as elite and great as our emergency service unit is, everyone knows the lay of the land in Times Square. And on a regular day, it's so crowded that it could take them 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get there, right? And in
yep.
that time, how many people could they kill?
Well, we already had an attempt by Al Qaeda on Times Square, car bomb that didn't go
I
off.
was I was there that night. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So one thing the NYPD did to really help protect the city against terrorism is advance a counterterrorism bureau, and the JTTF is part of that counterterrorism bureau, and they beefed up the membership of the JTTF. So before 9/11, I think the number was 11 investigators. Well, at its height when I was there, it was 142. I don't know what they have now,
Right.
but and they also created the counterterrorism bureau where they have fixers and mobile units that go around every day, 24 hours a day, and they go to these iconic locations in the city: Times Square, the Empire State Building, Wall Street. All these very popular places. Statue of Liberty. They have the harbor. They have aviation. They really beefed it up, and the city's a lot safer for it. But these guys are adaptable, and you really have to be careful.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you didn't mention was they have that camera system modeled after London's Ring of Steel, where
Yes.
it's actually almost like a smart camera, where if someone puts a bag down and they leave it, it'll notify the operator, like, look, someone left a suitcase or a bag at this location, it's been there for 2 minutes. And they could go back and ID the person that put it there. I mean, something like that would have been invaluable in Boston. The Zaneyev brothers used a backpack to
Yep.
have the what was that thing? The food processing thing where the bomb was
Yeah.
in.
The smelters or Papa. I forget what they call it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what they had put the bomb in. And
Yeah.
those things can take place of 100 men with a camera like that. When you think about it, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? From that system that you were talking about with the NYPD, I'm very familiar with it because we worked a lot of cases where we utilized it. And what really became apparent to me was, the subways, when people hop the turnstiles or pay their fare and all that, there's a lot of cameras in these subways, and they're pretty clear. They're very clear.
Right.
And that facility was able to plug into the subways, and you could see people as clear as I'm looking at you right now. I usually sometimes a video is going to be a little grainy or black and white or distant. So, like for investigators, and I'm pretty sure most of them know it, but if you get something, you get a crime happen on Avenue A, you can get video on Avenue B, Avenue C, and Avenue D of the guy walking up to it or running away from it. And those captures are just as valuable as the actual crime being video recorded.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, if you have video good enough to identify someone, that's like incredible video.
Yeah. Now you put it on social media, you put it on the
Yeah.
news.
Because
and you gotta
as an
move forward.
investigator, probably the most difficult thing is to get someone identified.
Yes. Yes.
How many hours, days, weeks, months that you spend trying to get someone identified?